I'm Steve Naive, and you're watching Noise 11.
And we welcome Steve Naive into noise11.com back in Australia for the second time this year. Third time in 18 months.
I'm seeing all the seasons from both hemispheres twice this year, and it's quite confusing. Yeah. So we're now in the spring here.
Yeah. It's
been lovely, actually. I've been lucky with the weather.
Well, that's right. You'll be jetting off into sort of the opposite next week, so make the most of it while you're down here.
Yeah.
It's an interesting show you're doing. The Steve Naive plays Elvis Costello, and it kind of reminds me of where you were. I can't even name when it was. Probably about 10 years ago. That was just you and Elvis came to Australia and did some small theatre shows.
Well, it's minimalism, but it's even more minimalist than that was.
Yeah.
I mean, playing Elvis's songs without him singing them is it reveals something about the music. I mean, everybody thinks of Elvis as a great lyric writer, but actually his music is incredibly interesting and complex, and it makes a good basis for a concert. I will, of course, be playing a few of my own tunes in there, but for the most part, I'm exploring some of the deeper recesses of his song output.
Well, as an example, a song like Accidents Will Happen is probably at the extreme pop end of anything that Elvis Costello Attractions ever did. When you perform it just on piano, it comes across as this magnificent classical piece.
Yeah, I was thinking that it was sounding a bit like a soundtrack from I don't know, a sort of strange mystery horror kind of film vibe. But that melody is fantastic. I love the way it goes from minor to major, and each time I play these tunes, sometimes I stick to the plot, and other times I start to hear the words that go on the songs, and then because I don't have a singer to support, I can go off into another. So sometimes they become like springboards, and I can find a whole piece of music coming from the song. So it's good fun. I've done a lot of preparation for this tour. All the summer holidays, I was lucky enough to be invited to houses that had pianos, and I've been working through it. And it's sort of, I don't really need to choose the songs, because each time, if I just pick up an old set list from 15 years ago and see what was on it, each one seems to suggest pianistic things. It's good fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in looking at the set list, you've done a magnificent job of sort of balancing the very well-known songs with, some of the deeper album cuts are in there as well.
Yes. Well, I didn't want to just play rare numbers, and I think I wanted to tackle some of the more well-known tunes, but to see if I could go to some places where they didn't go before, and that's been good fun. I've got something quite interesting with I Don't Want to Go to Chelsea. I don't know if I'll do it, but I might do.
Yeah. Well, I guess a song like Alison was probably one of the most performed songs that you would have ever played anyway, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there are really intensely crazy people who have put up websites with these kind of with figures of how many times these songs have been performed. I don't spend too much time on them, but some people have calculated that.
Yeah. You've had a very long career with Elvis Costello, not just as the Attractions, but also on some of the solo records, and also some of the collaboration records. I think the Alan Toussaint album you played on as well. That must have been a marvellous experience.
It was a marvellous experience, and I'm really. It's been great. Some of the adventures that Elvis has taken me on, and the Alan Toussaint one was particularly fun because I stuck with the Hammond organ, and they set it up on a thing above the grand piano, so each night I could watch what he was up to, and he's a lovely man. The first time we worked with him, we made a recording of a Yoko Ono song, and Elvis said, "I'll do the recording if Alan Toussaint can produce it." And we did "Walking on Thin Ice" with the Attractions.
I remember that, yeah.
With Alan Toussaint producing that, and it was a lovely experience. And something strange. He had he had a very famous studio in New Orleans called C. Saint Studios, where a lot of amazing recordings like the Meters and all this kind of stuff was made. And then after Katrina, I think the studio was abandoned. And after Katrina, we went there to New Orleans to do a show or something, and we had a couple of days off. And so I called C. Saint Studios because I wanted to record some demos, and I just wondered if it was possible to get in there. And someone said, "Yeah, it's not being used anymore, and the piano's still there if you want to come down. If you've got something you can record on, you're welcome." And so I went down there. Now, when we did Walking on Thin Ice, one of the things I remember, it was so great to work with Alan because he's a fantastic producer. One of the things I remember was at the moment when we came to record, suddenly all these people, local people from the area, came in and sat down on this couch listening to us. And when I got in there to make my piano demos, I was playing away, and I looked up, and through the control room window, I could see all these people coming in, sitting on the couch. And I think it was the same people from, like, it was a very strange moment. And it was like, I think the people that live around there were just invited in, because it helps you to play if you've got a good audience. So, that brings me round to the fact that we're playing here in Melbourne. It would be lovely to see some of our Elvis Costello fans. If you want to come, you will definitely hear a lot of the great tunes, and I think you'll enjoy the show.
Were you involved with the Burt Bacharach album?
Yeah. So again, that's another legendary musician and composer, and I got to see his hands on the keyboard and to see what he was up to. And in fact, when Elvis made the album Painted from Memory, Burt wasn't able to tour it, so I did actually do all the touring for that album. But we did maybe I don't know, 8 or 9 shows with Burt, and so I got to see how he does it.
Well, God Give Me Strength is such an amazing song, and you actually perform this on this current tour, right?
Yes, that's one of the songs in the set list. I mean, I hesitate between that one and This House Is Empty Now. But I'm hoping that even though it's a magnificent venue here in Melbourne, it won't be an empty house. No. So do come along. Yes,
Melbourne Recital Centre. You don't want to be performing This House Is Empty as the theme of the show.
No. It's a lovely hall, I've heard, because my friend Joe Henry was playing there a few days ago.
Yeah.
And another Australian friend of mine was with him, Heath Cullen. And I believe they had a good time there.
Well, you've played Hamer Hall in the past, and I think you'll find that they're pretty much on a par, those two.
Yeah, they've got one of the best pianos in Australia in there, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you get the opportunity to test drive a few other pianos as you go around the world?
Well, working on this project, one of the things that I've discovered is how much I like to play an upright piano, and how it's very different from a grand piano, and it produces something more. You can get very soft on an upright piano, and it does actually have a middle. There's 3 pedals on a good upright piano, and the centre one, when you connect it, lowers a piece of felt over the hammers to make it even softer, because people don't want to disturb their neighbours. You know? So, and I love the sound that gives. You can't get that on a grand piano. So,
right.
Yeah.
See, something I've learnt today.
Exactly.
Yeah. The album Together that you did recently is another incredible project, because the talents that you've brought in to work with you in the studio there, was that a matter of going through your own telephone directory and calling in the friends?
I wrote a load of songs to record as duets, and I wanted to work with people that I had worked with in the past, and that I had developed some sort of relationship with, so that it wasn't just a random group of people on the record. It's all people that I know very well, and they all accepted to sing with me. I'm not really a singer. Before I made Together, I made an album called Welcome to the Voice, which my life partner Muriel wrote all the words for and the story, and it's this kind of dramatic piece, a theatre piece. And so all the men that are on Together did actually work with me on that project, so it was a continuation. I find that the music is like a collaboration. You know, even on this tour where I'm just completely by myself, I've still got all the people that come to see me to collaborate with. You know, I was saying to my friend Heath last night, there should be a website where they keep a track of who's in the audience, because actually all these groups that play these shows are always the same, but it's the audience that's different every night, and maybe that's the reason why you can do a show that you're really happy with one night, and the next night you might not be so happy with it.
That's true.
It's the uniqueness of each audience that makes the concert special, you know.
You'd probably find a lot of famous faces in the audiences you played in over the years as well.
I have done, and we have done, and that's something that that I will talk about further during the concert, actually. But yeah, quite a number of people like to come hear Elvis perform and see what he does on stage, and we've had some great audiences. But it's not that. I think it's the unique combination of people coming to listen to music is something. It's interesting, the different makeup of different audiences. I've always had a good audience here in Melbourne, so you know, I love playing in Australia. People are very attentive, and they love to listen to music here.
And after you finish here, you're off to the United States for pretty much right around America, with shows in Los Angeles, I think Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, and a few winery shows as well. Yes. Well, this is catching on, you know, the winery aspect. We saw you out here last year in the Yarra Valley.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Australian wine, and I think you make one of the best wines. You make some of the best wines in the world.
I hope they didn't pay you in wine.
Well, they didn't pay us in wine, but we got to experience some amazing wines on the tour.
Yeah. So, is this the first time you've done the wineries in the US then?
It's not the first time I've played there before, but it's a guy. The guy who started it originally had a place called the Knitting Factory in New York, and it's a sort of concept where people that live in an urban city can decide to buy grapes and design their own wine, basically, and they put it into barrels which are then stored in the city winery at vast expense to the customer. You have to pay to rent the barrel, but then after, let's say, 5 years, you have crates of wine with your label that's got your name on and things like that. And it seems to be very popular with urban people.
Oh, we might get the Steve Nieve brand come up then.
Yeah. Well, it's not. I've never done it.
Oh, but maybe
you could do it.
Yeah.
You know, they would send you a list of grapes. I think they import grapes from all over America and maybe from different parts of the world. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes.
And they make the wine on their premises in whichever city it is, so New York. And my dad used to be a winemaker, actually. I lost my dad a few years ago, but he was an Englishman who tried to make wine in England, a very foolish thing to do, probably, with our sort of weather. But there is a variety of English wine, and yeah.
And you're living in France now, so you know you're right in the middle of it all.
Right in the middle of it all. Yeah.
Now, I'll ask you this question because I heard a marvellous piece of trivia the other day that the name Steve Nieve was actually gifted to you, I guess, by Ian Jury. Is that true?
That is true, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the first tours that I did was the Stiff tour, where there was several bands in a bus, and I was the youngest human on board, and so I landed with the name Nieve, which at the time I didn't like it very much, but as I've grown older, I really appreciate the name, and thank Ian for coming up with it. It's funny, I know we're on the radio, so you can't actually see this, but you can see this. There's the that was an advert that I answered in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Oh, we can see this,
Yes,
because we're being filmed, of course, by Roz. So there you go. That's how
That's how it all started.
That's how it all started.
Who placed the ad?
Stiff Records.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Must be able to sing. Must be broad-minded.
Yes. They didn't check those references, did they?
Well, no, but if you weren't broad-minded to begin with, you were by the end of the Stiff tour. I think.
Yeah. Well, Steve Nieve plays Elvis Costello as the name of the tour in Australia for the rest of this week, and then off to the US for a few weeks after that.
Yep.
So, Steve, it's great to talk to you here at noise11.com.
It's very, very nice of you to invite me, and hope to see you again sometime.